let's gather now to understand the real reason that we're here is what is the research in Olympics that are taking place. We have understood topics which were like urban development, finance, then we have doping, SDG, Paralympics, etc. that Olympics really focuses upon. But who does this initially? Who's at the center of this? And that is the OSRC, that is the Olympic Studies and Research Center. And that is also BCORE, which is in India. And that's why we are having this conference, is to gather experts, interested participants to be here, share the insights, take in insights of what are the different matters of Olympics and their subtopics, which we could take them as learning lessons. Currently, there are around 77 centers which are around the world, among 29 countries. And we have today from Switzerland, that is AISTS. You may have heard about AISTS India, which is the only one as their, I would say, branch from AISTS. And they deal with a great matter of courses. And we are pleased that we had the opportunity to have a MOU with AISTS India. So I thank Ravneet's team for giving us the podium to share and exchange this collaboration. Now, as you see, I just said collaboration, and that is one aspect of the Olympic value, that is exchange, right? Exchange and friendship in that sense. And here we are having a friendship between Switzerland, the hub of IOC, Mumbai, AISTS India, and now Gandhinagar. So I would like to invite the AISTS, I would say the executive director, who is based in Switzerland, Mr. Cedric Vanden Bogaerde, on the stage, who shall go, could we have the PPT please? Who will make us go through the entire 25 years of sports management in the Olympic capital. And would you like to stand? Up to you. We can give you the mic. Yeah, we could.
Might need a mic, I guess. Thank you, Urvi. First of all, I would like to congratulate you, Dr. Utsav, Vice Chancellor, for setting up this first conference here in India. I think it's an important milestone, one more on the activation of Olympism in India. So congratulations for that. If I tell you Lausanne, does that ring a bell to anyone? Yes, I see heads nodding. As sport people, we know Lausanne because of being the Olympic capital. The home of the IOC, you just mentioned it. The home of all the other, or many of the other international sport federations. But what is also unique in our region is the academic excellence we have. We have the chance to host many academic institutions, and some of which are really world leading in their fields, which have come together to found AISTS 25 years ago. So we're indeed based in the Olympic capital. This is our headquarters. So if you have a chance to travel to Lausanne, please come and visit us. We're on that building by the shores of Lake Geneva. And 25 years ago, the IOC had a question, which was, how can we help the sport movement and the international federations in being more professional? And somehow that question came across the desk of people in academia, and they came together and said, we can help. We was EPFL, the Swiss Institute of Technology, which is currently top 10 in the world in engineering. It was IMD, the Institute for Management Development, world-leading MBA. It was EHL, the Hospitality Business School, #1 in hospitality. University of Lausanne, front-running when it comes to sports science and anti-doping questions. And University of Geneva, which is a prominent institution when it comes to international relations and diplomacy. This is also what builds the DNA of AISTS. We are about multidisciplinarity. When you talk about sport, It's not just about sports science. It's not just about urban planning. It's not just about technology. And by the way, you're doing a very good job on this here at the conference. It's about looking at it all and understand how this integrates to then serve and train people who will then manage sports with that multidisciplinary understanding. So we're deeply connected to the world of sport thanks to our location, and we've developed a rich network with the international federations. We are very well connected with the academies as well. And I would say maybe what distinguishes also from other people who are studying sport is that we have a genuine passion for sport. People in our network, they practice sport. You will find them very often on the field of play, practicing or exchanging with coaches or athletes, always keen to know more and understand more about what is happening and what is really driving sport. So I did mention the academic partners. IOC, as they were sort of the catalyst for this, is obviously part also of AISTS, which opens us many doors, indeed, to serve the Olympic movement, as well as the local authorities, which help more on technical aspects for our organization. So that academic network, I'm talking about the institution, but what really the institution is the people. When we say academia, for us, it means people who have an interest in sport and are coming together to exchange, to debate, to learn from one another. This is obviously true on one hand with our professors who are coming from the 5 academic institutions. So we have experts in management, we have experts in hospitality servicing, experts in engineering, and so on and so forth that are coming and teaching and collaborating with us at AISTS. When I say people, I said the professors. Another very important, and I would say our second leg in a way, is our network of alumni. We're very proud of the graduates that are gone through AISTS, and we really try to maintain a close network and a sense of family. This is part of our value with them. Why? Because they go on to have careers in sport, working for international sport organizations, working for sport organizations back in their country. And along the way, they do acquire knowledge as well, practical knowledge from the field, which the academic training they've had will help definitely gather and structure. But it's also very helpful insights for us to leverage on and to bring together when we design training programs or even some research. And you can see here, because as Urvi just mentioned, indeed, we have opened a branch thanks to the vision of Mr. Gill here in India. That is not by chance, really. Sure, Ravneet was a catalyst for that. But it's also because over the last 25 years, in our main program, our postgraduate master in sport management and technology, India is actually the second most represented nation we've welcomed in our program, Switzerland being the number 1. It's close to 90 graduates that since 2000, I think the first one was in 2006 or 7, have come to Lausanne, have trained themselves on sport management and technology, and have gone back to the world of sport to work in sport. Which gives, from that perspective, India also an entry door into international sports. Several of them are now working in international sport federations, in rowing federation, at athletics integrity unit, and you name it, equestrian federation, and so on and so forth. With that community, we also have, as you can see, a presence worldwide. It's a network that requires to be cultivated, but it allows an exchange and access to information which is really fantastic for us as an academic institution. We also have had the privilege of welcoming Olympians. That is usually a focus for us when we build our program and our class, is to have Olympians and sport people in the program. Because when you talk about sport, it's not just about the theories and the concepts, it's also about hearing it from the field and the ones who are at the heart of it, the athletes. So that's why we always put a focus on having those profiles, because they bring value to the ecosystem just as much as an engineer, as a manager or as a marketeer would do, at least when they join the program on our site. And you can see here, many of them were in Paris. Of course, that was the opportunity for us to have a nice celebration. But for me, the actual real message there is that over 100 of a community of about 700 now were active in the games in Paris, either working at the organizing committee or with their international federation or with their National Olympic Committee. Sure, it's only 100 in a system that counts for 150,000, as Lambis mentioned, but it is quite an achievement for our organization. And the movement accelerates. There are already 200 graduates from the Indian program, which really shows the traction that this is gaining and the community that is growing. Now, I said multidisciplinarity is our way of approaching whatever we do, and especially when it comes to research, we're looking at it from various angles. This being said, we have developed over the past 25 years streams of expertise, where we have conducted projects that has allowed us to acquire more intelligence. The first one being business and economics of sports. I'll come to that, and we've talked a lot about that in the context of the games and the candidature. Economic impact, and I'll come back to it afterwards. Sustainability and legacy. We've been conducting studies or benchmarks of sustainability practices and legacy practices for events or event owner and in the wake of their events. Sport event management is also at the core of what we do, and we have several activities in this remit. And lastly, and maybe most importantly for us, because it distinguishes from many other sport management institutes, it's technology. Technology, particularly importing nowadays, I mean, sport and technology have always been connected. Just by the simple fact that athletes are looking at getting better and better, teams as well, and they've been leveraging technology ever since. Thinking about the first running races, they were on a simple track, then the material evolved. You started having starting blocks, which was an innovation which came through technology development, technology advancement. The growth of sport itself, as we know it today, has been fueled by the globalization of TV, radio, back in the days. And this accelerates. We've been talking about it, artificial intelligence, other digital technology developments. They're fueling all areas of life, and sport is definitely not immune to that. And for us, whenever we train managers, it is essential that they understand the key concepts being developed in technology. Personally, and that's even a personal commitment, being an engineer by training, I don't want graduates to walk out of our program without knowing how to at least basically manage data, for instance. Nowadays, you have to be data literate. So, yes, these are the fields where we have developed a little bit more expertise. And then in terms of what we do, you've understood, because I've mentioned the training program, we have three main streams of activities. The first one is long programs. We have our Master of Advanced Studies in Lausanne. We have the postgraduate certificate in Mumbai. These are really our two core activities. Then we have short programs that we are developing, that are running mostly in Lausanne. And then we have applied research. We don't do fundamental research. It's our academic partners who are conducting fundamental research, but we are using their results and outcomes to fuel that into the industry. So we're in a way building the bridge between the pure academic aspects and what's happening on the field. In this space, more specifically, and maybe to highlight a few of those services and touching upon some of the elements I started introducing, we do sport economic impact studies. So actually, we've talked about economic impact. It's quite central when it comes to organizing an event. Some numbers were put out yesterday. I think it was by Wolfgang, who was saying, when companies are doing economic impact assessment of a sport event, they say that it grows the GDP of 1.5%. Yes, they have all interest, especially when there are agencies to help you with the candidature, to put out big numbers, because it sells. We have academic roots, so we're much more conservative from that perspective. We have actually developed a methodology with several of our professors that has now been referenced by OECD, that has been used by Paris to assess their economic impact. It was a first, being tested on the scale of the Olympic Games. And it is one we're applying now, and we're pushing to be applied consistently, so we have more clear benchmarks across the industry that are consistent and can be comparable from one event to another, from one edition to another. And there, the first outcomes we have, having done a few, is that very much in line with what Paris published in December. Usually, the economic impact of a sport event would be around 0.3% of the GDP of the region that hosts it. Then it all depends on how you define the region and so on. It's getting a bit technical. But just maybe to put that into benchmark with some of the nice, shiny numbers that have been put out there. When we talk about impact, and those economic impact, we do it on events, but also on other sport organizations. We do it in Lausanne to assess the impact of international sports organization in Lausanne, economically speaking. We're also looking at the other dimensions, leveraging on the OECD references, environmental, social, media, so developing those aspects. Sustainability studies, as I mentioned, conducting benchmarks of how sustainability is implemented. I think it was back in 2007 already, we were publishing a sustainable sport event toolkit, helping the organizers to become more sustainable in this respect. And we're hoping, still in the works, but to have some interesting developments in circular economy. We do sport equipment testing and compliance. So all the swimsuits that swimmers are using in international competitions are tested at AISTS. Same for all volleyball nets and posts, for instance. Those have to come through us to be certified before being used in competition. And then we do various applied research projects, and it was mentioned just before, we've just completed one recently, a feasibility study for a major sport event. So always leveraging on the science of that is coming from our partner and academic institutions. Last, that I wanted to share with you on this session, being in the context we're in, is obviously the postgraduate certificate that is running in India. This, what you see there, is in a way our recipe. Please don't copy. But that is at the core of the programs that we develop. And that is the one that is implemented in Mumbai. We obviously start and pride ourselves on academic excellence, leveraging on the exceptional network we have in Lausanne. Drawing the best professors that are at the forefront of research in their field to come and share that with the participants. From the pitch, we want to have case studies, speakers, on-the-ground visits for the future managers, coming, yes, from people who are in the industry. Because you may have the concept that have been thought about in the academia, and then there's always the reality as to how it is applied in a given context. If you're working in a 5,000 people company or in a small association of 15 people, the approach will not be the same. And the resources you'll have to implement some of the big methods might not be the same. So this is something you have to recognize, and that we try to feed into the brain of our students by welcoming those speakers, by taking them on the field, in offices, and having first-hand presentations from the speakers. And then lastly, Because ultimately for us, especially doing postgraduate education, education is very nice, and people, society grows when more people are being educated. But we want it to be actionable. We want it to serve a purpose, that it accelerates career for whoever comes and joins and takes that journey. So in this respect, we provide certain services. We help our participants to understand, again, the ecosystem and understand where is it that their resources, skills would be most applicable. There's several profiles here in the room. I was just discussing with an entrepreneur in technology. There are people coming more from the government side. You don't need the same skills whether you're working in one or the other. According to your profile and what you like, you may be relevant in one organization more than the other. And helping you find your sweet spot and where you will be the most meaningful for the development of the sport industry is part of our activities. So for the past few years, we've now indeed had that program running here in Mumbai, which really is a privilege, and that reinforces this connection we've had with India since the inception of our activities in Lausanne. You have here a picture where every year we have the pleasure of welcoming that class in Lausanne for a study trip. And here was at the World Archery Center, where they came, practiced a bit, but also heard from the Secretary General of World Archery how he drives his organization. And then to finish off, yes, you have here some more details. I did talk about the fact we were multidisciplinary. This is also important for us when we work with people, when we onboard future managers in our programs. We compose classes that are diverse in essence. And this is, I think, a message that was shared also in some of the other discussions earlier, or I think just in the session before by Udit. When you talk about sport, you talk sponsorship, you talk marketing, you talk operations, you talk engineering and equipment, you talk public relations. So ultimately, you can't train one person to do all that, but you can train managers who understand the experts in this field and who have the language to be able to articulate, communicate with them, and get the information flowing. So that really is what is at the core of what we're doing, and how we select the participants that are coming in our program. So with this, I wanted to share a little bit of the world of AISTS with you, to give you a glimpse into what we do, the expertise that we have developed and on which we'd be happy to further exchange with you, the Olympic Studies Center. And to thank you for the opportunity of presenting to you here today. Thank you.
Some questions, is it possible? So Cedric has come all the way from Switzerland, and it is an honor for us that he's also here. It suits his plan, but it also suits our plan. So first, a huge round of applause for coming all the way to Laval and for presenting this insightful presentation, because it's a research academic institution which we all represent here. Before I ask any questions, do the audience have any questions to be asked to Cedric? I'll take the floor then, it's easier. So, you have been a triathlete, you participate in triathlons, and as you mentioned, you're an engineer as a background, and now you're in AISTS. How would you define that a young adult should take a career both as pursuing sports, but strict with determination, but on the side also study and not have his entire focus on sports? What would you think is your pep advice right now?
Maybe I'll go a little bit against Some people more on the academic side would say you need both. I would lean towards that personally. But I think ultimately everyone has to find its own modus operandi when it comes to that. When you're an athlete, what primes the most is that you're successful as an athlete. That's what you have to work towards. But life is not just an athlete career, which is 10, 15 years. It goes much beyond that. So you also need somehow, while you're training,
yeah, it's working.
so you have to think about the longer game. And there it's a question of balance. Balance in your training, in your life, and that's very personal. My advice would be to be able to manage both at the same time, but that varies across the year, and that's usually what makes it difficult. Is academic programs can be really strict, and is how and where do you find the flexibility to learn while you still train. Now, what I've observed as well at AISTS is being an athlete develops skills and qualities that you can't grow in any other way. And I think there's also a question for society and employers to recognize that. I see it. Usually the athletes we have in class, they're pushing themselves more. They go deeper when they're tackling a new topic than the other students or participants. And these are wonderful qualities. When you have an employee that has those qualities, it gets you so much further than a regular person, if I can put it that way. But this is sometimes not recognized also by society. So all in all, I would advocate for having sort of dual career programs, definitely, because I think you're more balanced in your life if you have both perspectives. Also because when sport goes bad, you have something you can project yourself onto. It decreases the risk of post-career depression in a way, in the sense that you have something you can project yourself onto, but you need to find it in your own perspective.
The reason I asked a bit of this personal question was, how has this changed your behavior with working with different stakeholders and startups? Because I assume a normal businessman, Donald Trump for example, completely interacts than you do because you have the experience of how an athlete is. That is one question. Based on this, I would like to know is how AISTS, although, and as you say in your presentation, you work with different organizations, correct? Now in India, you have, in the last 2 days, understood the summary of how our ecosystem is working. So what is your, I wouldn't say guidance, but your initial thought on how to deal with different stakeholders? And what kind as an OSRC?
Mm-hmm. Trying to gather my thoughts. I think, what do I think? The first aspect is you have to be clear on your goals so that you're efficient. I think the first matter is, what is it that you're developing? What is it that you're working for? What is your why? Coming back to an element that Lambis introduced yesterday. And what is your path towards the why? Now, it's true also that you have to recognize what every stakeholder is looking for. And that's the classic question of what's in it for me. When you approach a partner, if you're thinking about like the bid, for instance, how do you bring all those constituents of society together to support the project overall? And that goes through dialogue, exchange, discussion, knowing one another. It takes time to build a relationship. And that is really, when you talk about managing stakeholders, that is what's at the heart of it. You need to take the time. You need to have a clear vision that guides everyone. But then once that is set, it's about understanding. Maybe I'll take actually a concrete example. So before joining AISTS, some of you may know, I used to work for over a decade at the International Olympic Committee. In my first few years, I was managing our brand management program centrally, and we onboarded a new partner, Procter & Gamble. Big brand. Several brands in their portfolio. Came in full-on marketing way. We want to put the rings everywhere. That was their approach. We have the rings, we've just paid, we have the visibility, we want to put it out there. Up to a point where they want to put the rings on nappies, diapers. We were going through that program also by looking at what are the values that the Olympic Games stand for. And there was a dimension whereby notion of integrity, of protecting the rings and making them, some would say, even sacred to a certain extent. And there we had a lot of discussions with them, because some of our executive team were like, but that symbol, which is a flag, like a country flag, we can't just put it on every single commodities. So where do we find the balance? And it was a matter of discussing with P&G and sharing with them that vision that was behind the brand, the flag, and so on. And they said, now that I understand that, I understand why you don't want us to put the rings on the nappies. And back at the time, they indeed backed up from that. But that goes only through dialogue and explanation. And okay, sometimes you also have to compromise and understand where people are coming from. So in terms of managing stakeholders, that would be the approach that to me comes naturally. But it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, of energy, and it's a constant piece of work.
Amazing. Well, that's a good answer that you've given, because I understand Lausanne in 2020, and this would be my last question unless someone wants to ask, is Lausanne organized the 2020 Winter Youth Games there. How did AISTS contribute to that? Was there any work that AISTS did with these events? So for future OSRCs, this would be a recommendation.
Yes. So I wasn't at AISTS at the time, because I joined the organization in 2021. But yes, definitely there was a partnership, and actually it's something as AISTS we always try to support the organizing committees in one way or another. Our participants, students, were volunteers at for the event. There were projects done. We helped them. Sometimes they came to us with questions. They said, oh, how would you approach this? Or we would like to know more and research a little bit on that topic. Sure, we can help you. We put the network, our academic network, together, and we serve you from that perspective. So there were a few projects done in the lead up to the Youth Olympic Games, and volunteering was another part of it. Another example, which was not last year, but fall 23, when India hosted the IOC session. We actually worked with the IOC so that part of the participants, the students, could support the organization of the session as volunteers, because it was an opportunity for them to learn, to be exposed to the network, to understand better how those events are working and what is an international standard when it comes to delivering an event. But also, yes, thanks to those partnerships we have, these are opportunities we can create that advance people in their career as well.
Any other questions that the audience have? And I'll take that as a big thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the presentation. Thank you. Please. So, of course, the fact that you have come, we can't leave you empty-handed. We don't have a kurta for you or a Nerukoti, but we do have a memento. So I'll request Vice Chancellor Professor Dr. Bimal Patel to felicitate you with the memento. For the next session, we have a Dr. Urvi Khasnis. She is chairing in one of the paper presentations. So until then, we can either have, I don't have my glasses, sorry on me. So we have Dr. Urvi Khasnis here. So Dr. Khasnis has come all the way from Edinburgh in Scotland to attend our conference. So again, can we have a huge round of applause for coming all the way from Scotland to here. Dr. Khasnis has completed a PhD from the University of Edinburgh, and interesting enough, it focuses on exploring the impactful factors and alternative ways to facilitate sporting success in India. She'll be presenting her paper later in the evening, but for now we'll have her discuss a bit about her research center that's in Scotland, and it's called SCORE. We are called BCORE and they're called SCORE. So the research that she looked at was into policies implemented by the Indian sport and quality of coaching and broader coaching system within the country, which is a fundamental topic that was discussed not only in the conference but outside. Is grassroots and sports and coaching is where we have to start developing programs upon. Besides being a teacher fellow in sports psychology, she's also employed as a performance psychologist in one of the companies in Edinburgh, and she has worked with individuals and organizations in different sports. So I'll leave the presentation to you to give.
That's the wrong one. That's my paper. Can I do it together? Because this is my paper presentation, not the score. Yes, yeah. It was labeled SCORE, University of Edinburgh. Yeah. The other one. Okay. Right. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And firstly, I think a big round of applause to you guys for putting this conference together. I've had an amazing time so far, so well done, you guys. Thank you. I'll quickly talk you all through SCORE, which is essentially a similar research center based in Scotland. I will start off by introducing the two colleagues of mine that lead this group. So SCORE was founded in 2022 by Dr. Jungwoo Lee, or Jay Lee as we commonly call him, and Dr. Louis Nolte. And they're both very passionate about Olympic and Paralympic research, which I'll talk you through some of the conferences and guest lectures that they've had at the university so far. And that just really shines through their passion for Olympic and Paralympic sports. The vision that they had for SCORE was to develop, promote, and disseminate research about Olympic and Paralympic sports. And I will talk you through how we're in the process of developing, promoting, and disseminating the knowledge. So in terms of developing it, we've worked really hard to collaborate with a lot of different organizations and countries so far. So there's been lots of collaborations going on in Korea, China, South Africa. One of the most recent ones has also been in Kenya, Singapore, as we can see here. There's also Germany. And one of the vision that they also had was not just to develop research, but actually to also promote and contribute towards educational programs. So a lot of the things that we cover at University of Edinburgh are driven by research done within the university, but also more broadly. And that all focuses on sports broadly, not just Olympic or Paralympics, but just sports more broadly. And sport development in different countries. Also, SCORE is very, very interested in collaborating with countries everywhere, but more specifically focusing on the Asian countries and universities, which is also why Dr. Lee and Dr. Nolte have personally sent apologies for them not being able to come for this conference, but have sent me as the representative to initiate collaborations with RRU and BCORE as well. Some of the other work that we are currently conducting, which also shows our passion for developing research, is by the PhDs that we have going on at the university, which are again not just based on the UK sporting system, but are actually quite global. We have students coming in from China, from Kuwait, from Korea, from India. So I have recently taken on a PhD student who will be doing her PhD on talent development in the Indian sporting system. So we are constantly trying to enhance what we are doing through research as well. Guest speakers, so this is how we are trying to promote and also start disseminating the knowledge that we're gathering. So over the last 2 years, we have put together a lot of guest speaker talks, conferences, where we've invited people from the Olympic and Paralympic movements, and they have essentially tried to share their experiences, help students from our university understand some of the factors that maybe we don't or hadn't had an exposure to. So their journeys, their pathways, what helped them, what did not help them. We've also had people from sporting organizations that have come in and talked us through how the governance of organizing sports goes, which is again in line and in theme with what we've been discussing over the last 2 days. So that is one of the things that we are very keen to continue doing. We also actually put together hybrid structures as well, purely because that sort of next. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I was just saying that we have put together hybrid sessions as well to promote, obviously, those that can come to Edinburgh in person, great, we'd love to host you, but we do appreciate that that's not always possible. So a hybrid format has always worked really well for us, wherein we can get speakers from everywhere in the world as well and promote what they're doing. And this is just a quick round-off of what specifically Dr. Lee and Dr. Nolte have been researching and attending conferences in the past, which some of them have actually been linked to other Olympic research centers. Obviously, BCORE will be added to this list the next time we present. But yeah, just a quick round. This is what SCORE is, and we're looking forward to more collaborations with other research organizations. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the OSRCs to Dr. Khasnis in case of any collaborations or anyone else on research projects, research fundings? None? Okay, let me ask you a question, because I've seen also how Cedric presented and yourself. There are a lot of research projects that you take upon. How is a research project set up, and when you're dealing with different stakeholders? First is the funding, the idea, the outline, and the timeline for it.
So obviously it depends on whether it's a PhD or a research project, essentially. So for PhDs in the UK, it's 3 years plus 1 year, and that's primarily on the student to design. But if we are looking for research grants, which is again a very popular thing, we put together the grant based on our interest and obviously what's going on in the field. So for example, one of the recent grants that we won was in collaboration with the University of Bath. and that was an IOC grant as well, which is focusing on sports injuries in athletes and how can we best support them from a medicine but also a sports science perspective. So that was a very targeted grant that we had to put together. So in that case, what the person or the organization demands, that's essentially how we put it together. And you can also approach individual organizations if you have an idea that interests them or you know that interests them. You can put together a proposal and approach them and try and win it that ways as well. So that's broadly how it goes in the UK at least.
How would you recommend for India, considering you've studied here?
I think it's, again, a fairly straightforward process. So if there is an idea that you are very interested in, putting together a proposal, approaching somebody that does a similar research. So for example, the student that we have taken on from India just now, that's how she approached us as well. And again, my research interest matches with that. So we took her on as a PhD student. Similarly, students from China or Kuwait that we've taken on was a similar process. So they approached my colleagues who were researching on that field, and if they have capacity and they like it, then they take you on. So yeah, if anybody's interested in approaching somebody in the UK, that's a good way to do it.
I get it. Because now the Commonwealth is also taking place. Are you working on the Commonwealth? Do they normally work, OSRCs?
Not the OSRC so much. There's lots of research going on around concepts that link into the Commonwealth, but there's no direct involvement through the OSRC just yet, at least. But yeah, hoping for the best.
Interesting. I don't know. I ran out of questions. I could ask more, but.
Hi, Urvi.
Hi.
So I'll be talking as an athlete. So what would be the genesis or the basis of talent identification if RRU, BCORE or School of Physical Education would like to have any kind of proposal? Mm-hmm. So what would be the genesis? Example, RRU is doing exceedingly well with Wushu. Mm-hmm. We are also having Arjuna Awardee and all the celebrated athletes. So we are looking forward for some more talent identification in this regard. So what would be your take and any proposal you would like to collaborate, any of the inputs you would like to give?
Firstly, I think talent identification is a very important topic to take on. And I'm going to speak slightly in contradiction to what we've been saying over the last couple of days. For me personally, talent identification is not just through competitions. There needs to be a lot more that goes into talent identification, and this is me speaking as a psychologist. So a very, very leading line of research within psychology is not just your physical talent, but everything around it, your environment, your psychology, and obviously that ties into sports sciences and the impact of all those things on athletes and how that develops them to go further. So one of the points will definitely be think broad, not just sort of standard. And also systems, because obviously systems have a direct impact on whether they'll be identified to begin with, and if yes, how can they then progress through that. So I'd say that's the 2 points to definitely consider. And again, we have quite a few talent identification PhDs going on. Quite a few of my colleagues also research on talent identification and development, so I'll be more than happy to give you my contact details, and we can then take that from there.
So we would be really happy to have any kind of collaboration as far as... Am I audible? So we would be really happy to have any kind of collaboration as far as talent identification is concerned. Any mechanism you're following over there at SCORE which we can adopt or we can look forward to?
At SCORE, no. There's no particular mechanism. other than looking at talent identification models and obviously figuring out what works best for the Indian context.
So any outcome or implementation, whatever the outcomes have been, or any implementation on the Indian populace you must have experienced?
Not on talent identification, but I do have something on coach development.
All right.
Which is very India specific.
Would you like to share a bit?
I will at some point today, because that's my...
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If these are all the questions, then let's go for a break. We have a half an hour break until 5:30 with tea and snacks, and then we will follow with 1 hour paper presentations, and then we'll close the conference day for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Although you're from Pune, but your first time here in Allahabad, so we have a memento for you. If again, Vice Chancellor Sir, Professor Dr. Bima Patel could felicitate her with a memento and a shawl.